Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to IVED 2022 Judging Brief. My name is Chia. I'll be your chief educator in this IVED 2022. And accompanying me in this judging brief will be Muti, one of the chief education panels. So yeah, in this judging brief, we're going to talk about things that are necessary for your judging journey in this IVED 2022. So let's go with the next slide. All right, so the basic guide on Educator, what they do and how they do it. So the first thing first, we're going to talk about, your main responsibility as an educator. So there are three things that you have to do. First of all is of course to assess and also decide the winner of the debate. Secondly is to score each speaker in the debate. And last of all, you are obliged to provide a verbal education to give the debaters the closure, the result, and also the necessary comparisons or even the tipping point that gives them the clear picture on why they win or why they lose and every single contents in the debate earlier. So moving on, next slide. So another question is, what makes a team win a certain debate? There are three things. The first one is which team won the most important clash. Secondly, which team won the most clashes, and the third one, which team had better explanation of their arguments. So these are the necessary questions that you can use in order to give the victory point to a certain team, whether it is the affirmative team or even the negative team. All right, moving on. So assessing a debate. So debate may consist of many issues. So all you have to do is to identify the core issues of the debate, those focused upon or heavily discussed by the teams. An issue might come implicitly, so you have to be really careful in identifying them. For example, in a certain practical motion, there might be issues about the practicalities, or there might be issues about harms and benefit, or even the issues about the rights of a certain actors, or even the responsibility of certain actors that might implicitly come in the debate. So you have to be really careful in assessing that and identifying that and deciding whether or not that's a fair tipping point or a fair metric to decide or to assess a certain team's winning. And also you have to be very attentive and also carefully weigh the interaction or engagement between teams. So you do not necessarily give the winning for a certain team simply because that team gives a better argumentation. You have to also assess a certain team's refutation or even rebuttals. You have to really see whether or not the rebuttals or the refutation is already enough to debunk that strong argumentation made by one of the teams. Remember, strong argumentation is not the only insurance policy for a team to win, but a strong reputation and also the dynamics of the debate. So in order to assess the debate, you have to maintain a holistic point of view. So not only the arguments, but also the refutation, the dynamics, or even the stances, or any other things that are necessary. So the complete package of that speaker needs to be grabbed in your note, and that's going to give you a holistic and a very conducive assessment. Okay, moving on. So now let's talk about scoring. So other than assessing the debate holistically, you are expected to have like a good sense of scoring just to make sure that you give a fairness for the debaters that have worked hard for this year's IVET. So here we go. Let's start with the scoring. So the range that we will use, it's that we are not going to use 67 until 83 range score, or even 69 until 81 range score. In this year's IVET, we're going to use the inspiration from Nepal Australs 2021. So this is the recent international tournament that uses the same format as this year's IVET. So we're going to use 70 until 80 format. So there will be no decimals in this tournament. And the reply speeches, we will give you the range of 35 until 40. So you may use decimals of 0.5 points. You have to keep in mind that reply speeches are separate from substantive speeches. So for educators and judges, do not necessarily divide the scores of the speaker's substantive speech in half for the reply speaker automatically. There is no such thing as automated reply speakers score. Say, for example, the prime minister or the first speaker affirmative gets 76. It does not mean that he or she or they will automatically get 38 for the reply speech. So you have to really assess the reply. There might be possibility that the reply is worse than the substantive speech. That means that the reply deserves lower than 38, or vice versa. The reply speaker might be way better than the substantive speech. Say, for example, that's like the best reply that you have ever heard in your judging journey, for example, and you feel like the speaker deserves the score of 40. You can give the score of 40 because you feel like that reply speaker is equivalent to the substantive score of 80. So feel free to give that high score. So you have to be really fair in assessing the reply speaker and also the substantive speaker in the debate that you judge. All right, moving on. So now for the substantive speech scoring criteria. Now let's talk about 70 until 75. The first one, a speaker will get 70 if the content is almost never relevant and the speech is both confusing and very, very confused. There is no structure or even fulfillment of role in any meaningful sense that is provided, or the speaker at worst case did not even speak at all. So the speaker only stated the motion and only stated uh, his, her, or their personal preference, saying that, yeah, I like this motion because this motion is really fun. So good luck, everyone, for the debate. And then that's it. So it is considered as not speaking at all because he or she or they did not even fulfill the role, did not even give any necessary point that is related to the debate. So yeah, unfortunately, the speaker deserved 70. Next one, 71 until 72. So the speaker that deserves 71 until 72 is the speaker that rarely makes irrelevant claims, and the speaker only occasionally formulate a certain argument, but that argument was unfortunately shallow, or even it is based on a rudimentary analysis. The speech is not only shallow in terms of the content, but at the same time, it is very difficult to follow due to the little or no structure, or there is no conclusion, there is no direction, there is no mechanization, there is no clarity that is given by the speaker. So if you feel like that speaker still has many difficulties in terms of the structure, in terms of the content, in terms of the direction or conclusion, that means the speaker deserves the score of 71 until 72. Next one, 73 until 74. So this speaker has already made relevant arguments occasionally, but with a very rudimentary explanation. What does it mean? It means that, yeah, we can understand the speech. The speech is easily understood at the vast majority of the time, but the structure was still poor, and there is still a poor attempt in fulfilling the role. Say, for example, the rebuttals were really off, for example, or even despite the strong responses, despite the strong refutations, but the arguments were not really working, for example, or the setup was not really working in the first speaker's speech. So knowing that, despite the relevance, despite the necessary significance or importance that are being drawn in the speech, but because of the very rudimentary explanation and there is no decent structure in the speech, that's the reason why this is still considered as a below average score. That's why if that speaker belongs to this category, you can give them 73 until 74. Next, the average score will be 75. So a speaker will get 75 if, oh wait, the slide, yeah, no, previous slide. Okay, again. Okay, yeah, so sorry for the issue. So 75 arguments are generally relevant and some explanation of them are given, but yeah, there is still like some obvious gaps in logic, multiple points or peripheral or irrelevant material, and simplistic argumentation. So what does it mean? It means that a speaker can get average point if, yeah, if you feel like, oh, this speaker has fulfilled their burden of proof, he or she or they have fulfilled like their role and such. But then again, there is still some arguments that are simplistic. There are still some arguments that are not backed up with multiple layered analysis, and you feel like the speech was sometimes difficult to follow. So if you feel like a speaker is fulfilling this category, you can give them or him or her 75. So for the next one, 76 or above, it will be explained by Mutti.
All right. I hope I'm audible. Thank you so much, Kachia, for the wonderful explanation. I'm going to continue for the next speaker score. So you can give a speaker 76 to 77. If the speech is good to very good, the speech contains relevant arguments and contribution which address the key issues in the round, and speaker is also able to provide sufficient and thoughtful explanation. The speech is largely clear, and the speaker fulfilled their role. So they're not only explaining certain assertions of an argument, for example, but there is a good analysis about the reasonings or about the comparatives, about the exclusivity of this argument. So this is a good, generally good speech with, clear substantives, and also it's easy for you to follow. Next, you can also give speaker 78 if the arguments are sophisticated, they were made which successfully engage with the main issues in the round. So this is generally not only an argumentative analysis, but also responsive, and also an analysis that engage to the biggest clash coming from the opposition, for example, and the links are very well explained, the arguments are central to their case and weren't layered and nuanced responses, the speech is clear, and the flow from one argument to another is coherent, makes it very easy for you to follow as an educator. Last but not least, you can give 79 to 80 for speakers in which the speech is likely one of the best speeches given in Australs. The speaker is able to be comprehensively responsive to all the important attacks from the opposition, either via their arguments or rebuttals, and is able to present compelling argumentative analysis, which convincingly further their case. So this is a speech that becomes argumentative and also responsive one way or another. And it is difficult for you as an educator to think of any other satisfactory refutations or rebuttals of any of the arguments that are being made. So this is likely like one of the best speeches that you're ever going to hear in IVED 2022. So yeah, those are for the substantive speech scoring criteria. Next, we're going to talk about the reply speech scoring criteria. You can give, you can give 35 if the reply speech makes the debate more confusing instead of clarifying it. So the reply speaker is not necessarily like mapping out the debate, but just like nitpicking certain unimportant points that is being brought by their team or the opposing teams, for example. So instead of making the debate clearer or making the tipping points more visible, it makes it even more confusing in the way you need to assess it. You can also give 35.5 to 36 if the reply speaker mentions only the assertions of their team. So they're basically only listing, my team has already brought A, B, C, D, E. The opposition has already brought A, B, C, D, E. No comparison at all. No, no comparatives at all, and it's also very confusing. So this is only the assertions of their team and also the opposing teams. You can give the scores towards those speakers. You can also give 36.5 to 37 if the reply speaker have an attempts to refute the explanation of arguments which in inadequate structure, for example, right? So they already have an attempt that this is probably the clashings of the debate, for example, but the structure is poorly made. So the speech is actually not conclusive. They have an attempt to show you the tipping points, but the comparatives and also the weighing of this kind of tipping points is still not clear in their speech. You can also give 37.5. This is the average for speaker score, in which the speaker actually provides average review of the debate and is able to at least summarize important points in the debate. They are conclusive of their own arguments, although they may not really be advantageous to the speaker's team. So they already have an average review of the clash of the tipping points, although it's still quite a bit confusing, for example, why then this tipping points is advantageous for their team, for example, right? And you can also give 38 to 38.5 if the reply speaker provides a review that able to highlight the strengths of their team as well as the opponent's weaknesses. So this is generally a good review of the debate, the mapping out of the debate. You can give, you can give 39 to 39.5 if the reply speaker provides a very compelling review of their team strengths. So they are able to highlight This is the strength of our team. This is the tipping points that should matter in this debate over their opponent, and is able to also not only highlight but also frame certain issues of the debate to their advantage. And last but not least, you can give 40. This is the best reply score, a very convincing reply speech that strengthens your confidence in your decision and or has the ability to change your decision and had you initially gave their opponent the win, for example, right? So this is a very convincing reply speech that not only managed to point out or like highlight, but also frame that this is the contributions that my team has already made, for example. But not only that, why then this needs to be, the conclusive tipping points that you need to use in your education, for example, making your assessment very, very much easier, for example, or even change your initial decision, for example, because this is just very convincing. So yeah, those are the scoring range for reply speakers. Now let's talk about margin, right? 1 to 2 is a very close debate with minor differences separating the teams. So this is a very tight debate, for example, a very tight round. And then there is 3 to 4. This is a close to clear debate. So there are probably a lot of assessment, a lot of questions that you can weigh and compare over the other, for example, to see which team actually has more advantages. And 5 to 9 is a relatively clear decision with one team having obvious advantage over its opponent, and margin more than 10 is definitely a very clear win, for example, for one of the team inside that round. So yeah. Now let's talk about delivering your oral education. So after you've made your decision and you make your scoring either for the speakers and also for the reply speeches and whatnot, the question then becomes what to do afterwards, right? Like, when should I deliver my verbal education? How should I deliver it? Is there time frame and whatnot? So this is basically going to summarize all of that, right? Firstly, a very important reminder before we get the more technical things about delivering your OAs, educator decisions must be made individually, right? This is not something that you can discuss with another judges that are judging the round with you. For example, you have to make this individually and independently by yourself before you start your conferring with another educator. So this is a very important reminder. Please remember to make your decision independently and individually. So when it comes to oral education, please, this is very important about the when. Please do it after you submit the ballots, so you do not necessarily prolong or delay the tabulation or the tournament. Just submit your ballot first, complete your scoring, complete your decision, and then afterwards you can start preparing and also delivering your oral education. Secondly, the goal of an oral education is to explain the reasoning behind your decision in a manner that the teams will understand. So please refrain yourself from using too complex words or words that might not be comprehensible for some individuals, for example, because the goal of an oral education is to make sure that the debate becomes clearer, that they understand the tipping points, that they get, just like what Katia said previously, they get understanding of why I lose, why I win, and also get some certain closure instead of this oral education, right? An ideal oral education needs to have 3 things. Firstly, obviously your call, who is the winner of the debate. Secondly, your reasonings, and also, basically justification of your decision. This can be in the form of clashes or issues or tipping points. And last but not least, there is no individual constructive inputs for the speakers. Just save that for after to make sure that it is going to be more conclusive. This is going to take a shorter time, for example. So if you want to give feedback or general comments or what things that can be improved by the debate or by the team or by the speakers, you can just save that for after you deliver your oral education and you want to give that to the teams and whatnot, right? So yeah. And also about oral education, all educators should give their education because this is Austral's format. So yeah, everyone needs to give their education verbally. Secondly, all educator feedbacks will be given by the teams. And thirdly, the order of delivery will be delivery of oral education by trainee, followed by oral education by panelists, and ended by oral education by the chair in that round, right? In terms of split decisions, the educators in the majority should go first to deliver their oral education, and after that, educators in the minority, but still follow the trainee panelist chair order, basically, right? Still follow this rule. And in terms of voting, only chairs and panelists can vote. So unfortunately, if you're still a trainee, you're not able to vote in the decision making, for example, or in the call of the debate. So yeah, those are the very technical parts of the oral adjudication that you need also pay attention to in IVED 2022. All right, that's all for the judge briefing. Best of luck. We'll see you at the IVED 2022, and we also want to give a huge shout out and also credits to the IVED 2021 Chief Education Panel for this wonderful PowerPoint, wonderful informative slides and whatnot. Thank you so much, and best of luck, everyone. See you at IVED 2022.